Hi, Ms. Rhodes. It's Anna Taylor from your face-to-face science methods class here at Fort Hays State, and I'm doing my video recording reflection. And I hope that it's okay that I'm in my bedroom. My living room has my roommate in it right now, and I thought it would be really awkward to do this at the library. So I was also going to make note that I'll probably be looking down some at the notes I made on the questions you asked. That way I for sure give you all of the information that you wanted to know. Okay, so the first question that you asked us about was the activity that we benefited the most from. And for me personally, that would have been creating and teaching the very first lesson that we did in the Makerspace before we were doing the big group, where we were broken up into groups of 2 or 3. So I was with Michelle and Keaton for that. And the reason that that was most beneficial for me personally was because first it really had us working directly with the standards. So we had to figure out what standards we were going to meet, and we had to figure out how we were going to meet them, rather than with the picture perfect science. It was really nice, but we didn't have to do any work with the standards. So I learned a lot more from this for that reason, because I had to deal with the standards. And then also I just really liked that I created it, and so it was something that I could be really proud of when I taught it, rather than the picture perfect ones were already made for us. And then finally, I liked that it also showed me how really easy it is to make science hands-on. I think that was the most beneficial thing for me in doing that, and in doing it in the makerspace, where we didn't necessarily have to focus on assessing them. Obviously, we wanted them to learn something, but we could really work on, is this fun? Are they going to enjoy it? And because of that, it really pushed my group, I think at least, to really go outside of our comfort zone. And so that was really good for us. The next question that you asked was the least beneficial activity. And for me, it's actually kind of the exact opposite of what I just talked about. The least beneficial for me was the huge group lessons. And I think it was a really good idea, but like I said, I didn't have as much experience then with actually having to make something geared towards the standards, and so that didn't really help me much in that aspect. And then also, we didn't do as much prep for it. It was kind of just there, and that's definitely not a bad thing. And I think the plus to those is that it did show us, hey, if you buy this book, which I did, then you have that really easy access that you can use that if you need to, when you're like short on time. But it didn't give us much practice actually creating them. So one suggestion that I would have maybe for next semester would definitely be to balance out the two and have the students create a few of their own, and then maybe you could do those every other week, and then in those weeks in between you're using the picture perfect ones, so they have 2 whole weeks to create a lesson, because in that week break you're doing a picture perfect lesson. So they get to see both things. They can see how easy picture perfect can make it, but then they can also see what it takes to prep your own lesson. So for me, that was the least beneficial. And it wasn't, like I said, wasn't a huge thing, because there was a lot of benefits to it, but because I just didn't create it and work with the standards as much, I would say it was the least beneficial for me. And then to make the course better, I think, like I just said, I think it would be a really cool idea for you to try and balance it to where every other week they're actually creating a lesson and teaching it, and then on those weeks in between you're using the picture perfect, so they kind of have a break and more time. Because I will say, I think the way we started it this semester, if we had done that every single week, it would have been really overwhelming to have to pump out a lesson every single week. And obviously that isn't what we'll be doing when we're teaching, but to be doing that now in a class when it's a lot of people's first time really dealing with science content, I think it would be overwhelming. So I think that would be a really beneficial balance. And then also, this is just a little thing, and this was actually specifically me, but I think it would really help if you knew specifically when Makerspace was going to be, if you put that on Tiger Enroll. Because obviously I struggled with band to be there on Mondays, and I really appreciate you working with me. But if you do have that listed right away, then students won't have to worry about stuff like that. And I totally understand that this was your first semester, and so you were kind of rolling with the punches, and I think you did an awesome job. But that would be another suggestion I have. And then the other thing that really stuck out to me is, if you're going to do the picture perfect lessons, I think you should make everyone volunteer. And it's not a huge deal, but I definitely felt like the same people were teaching every week. And I know that we all helped with it, but as far as like read alouds and teaching many portions of the lesson, I felt like when you needed people to volunteer, it was always the same people. And that's not a bad thing, but I think there were definitely a few people in the class who didn't really teach, and I think that they need that push because some students just aren't comfortable with it. But I think the whole point of our methods classes is to make us comfortable with it. So I just think it would be really good if you pushed them to do that. So those would be my major suggestions. And then as far as how I feel about my ability to teach lessons in science now versus when I started, I feel so much better. And there's a few reasons for that. But I think the biggest one is that you showed me how easy it is to make science hands-on. Because for me in school, I had one teacher who made science hands-on, and the rest of them taught from the book. And it was terrible, and it was boring, and I didn't learn a lot. And so it was really scary for me because I was like, okay, I don't have the knowledge, and I'm going to have to teach these kids the knowledge. But if I teach them the way I was taught, obviously they're not going to learn because I didn't. But then the flip side of that is there's that mentality we have that there's not time for it. And I think that you really showed that, one, you can make time for it, and two, that you can make it hands-on and fun so that the kids really learn something from it. So yeah, I feel a lot better. Oh, and the last thing on that, excuse me, I feel a lot more confident with the standards. I feel like I understand the standards, and that's a really good thing for me. And then the last question is, what's most important to me when I teach science in a classroom? What's going to be most important for me? And it was something that you repeated all year, and it really stuck with me, and it's to just not use the book. And not avoid the book, but to just use it as a resource and not teach straight from the book. That is one thing that you stressed, and I think it's something that needs stress, because like I said, that's not how we were taught. That's not how I was taught. And so it was really beneficial for me to kind of have it pounded into my brain, so to speak, that I shouldn't do that. And I think you're right, and I think it's a very true statement. And so that's the one thing, that and making it hands-on, excuse me, are the two things that I'm really going to take to heart from this. Overall, you did a really good job. I know that it was your first semester, and I think adjusting, you've done awesome. I think next semester is going to be even better. And the last thing I would add is all those little tips that you gave us about classroom management, keep doing that, because it was really helpful, and I took a lot away from that. And I was actually going to tell you the thinking finger that you told us about, like in the first or second week. I used that with my social studies kindergarten class, and they loved it. And I actually just had my last internship like 10 minutes ago, and we still use that, and I taught it to them in September. So that's really awesome. Little stuff like that was really great, and it made the class that much more valuable to me. So yes, overall, great job. I learned a lot, and I look forward to see what you do with future classes, because I think you're going to do awesome.